Hey everyone, what's going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. It's Rescue Ace is going to be the next deck that we are going to cover here. And as you can see, we are going with more of a pure Rescue Ace build this time around. Well, quote-unquote pure, I guess depending on how exactly you define a pure deck. Because to be fair, we are playing a couple of very small engines that are not necessarily of the Rescue Ace archetype in order to boost our consistency. We are on a small sinful package here with the 1 Duel, the now 2 of Wanted, of course the original Sin to go ahead and pull out the Hydrant, and we also have a Subversion in case that ends up coming up at pretty much any point we don't go first, right? But on top of that, we are also rocking a playset of Bonfire and 1 Snake Eyes Poplar. So this is overall fairly similar to the initial Rescue Ace build I tested. One of the main differences is that we're only on 1 Poplar this time, not on 2. I do very much prefer the idea of playing 2. 3 Bonfires with only the 1 Poplar as in the deck as a target to search it out feels like it could be awkward, especially in grind games. But I think for consistency's sake, it's definitely right to play 3 Bonfire. Because Bonfire, alongside Poplar, and Wanted, and Duel, and all of those leading to Original Sin, are going to be one of the main ways that you often go into your Rescue Ace plays via summoning the Hydrant that way, right? We also have Rhoda for the Airlifter. Airlifter, if you only have 1 normal summon and like that's it, you definitely prefer to use Airlifter. That way you can go into Emergency and then if nothing else, just Turb set 4. Or rather, you would get Hydrant F to add Turb, banish Airlifter in Emergency, then set 4. But yeah, it doesn't always necessarily pan out that way. For example, if you open Hydrant and like nothing else, you kind of don't actually really have plays at that point because Hydrant can only add a Rescue Ace monster. So even if you had Airlifter and you don't have a way to summon it, then you can't go into Emergency and then pivot into plays. So that's why, honestly, I wouldn't even consider Hydrant to be like the main starter of this deck. In previous Rescue Ace builds, when the deck was overall at lower power, then opening Hydrant was pretty good, to the point that you'd even play stuff like 1 for 1. Now, I think if you're going to open just 1 Rescue Ace card, I think Airlifter is definitely the way to go. I've seen other Rescue Ace builds playing 1 for 1 for the Hydrant. I don't think it's that good. Honestly, like I said, Hydrant isn't necessary. To be fair, if you special Hydrant, then you can add Airlifter and then normal it. But 1 for 1 is also very cost intensive, and easy to negate, and very easy to prevent the activation in the first place if Shifter or any other banish effect is in play. 1 for 1 is a card that I kind of, not really reluctantly I guess, but it wasn't even in my initial pure Snake Eye build. So I don't think it's right to play 1 for 1 in Rescue Ace, generally speaking, unless you are playing like Snake Eye Rescue Ace, which that is a variant of the deck that I do plan on covering at some point this season. But like I said, for now we're on good old-fashioned Rescue Ace. So actually, this build ends up being fairly similar to one that did very well in the latest Decade Meta Weekly, and I feel bad because I'm currently blanking on the name of the person who actually won the Meta Weekly with it. It was Mobile EX, or Mobile EX. So the build that we have here is actually, I think, only 1 card difference for the main deck, and I think for the extra deck too, honestly. And that's going to be, instead of a 3rd Super Poly, we're on a 2nd Impulse. But also, again, like I mentioned at the top of the video, the overall theme of this build is still pretty similar to the initial one that I first posted last season there. So, yeah, again, if you're going to be on pure Rescue Ace, I think this is generally the way to go. You don't necessarily have to be playing the Super Polys, but they're very, very good board breakers. If you weren't on Super Polys, like if you wanted the extra X space, or if you just don't own Super Polys, then Triple Tack would definitely be my next card I would go to for Disruption, maybe a Nibiru, and like a Veiler or something, like another hand trap. If again you don't own Super Polys. But that said, like, I do really like the Super Polymerization. One target for it that we could be playing that we're actually currently not is the Earth Golem at Ignister. This actually ends up being a pretty solid Super Poly target against Snake Eye, the material requirements being a Cyber Monster +1 Link Monster that will very often be, you know, the Ambler Whale plus the IP Masquerader, right? And then once you fuse those two away, all they have left is the Flamberge, and they don't have a way to send it to the graveyard. So at that point, you're looking, generally speaking, pretty good once you've done that. But didn't quite have room in this extra deck. I think if I were to cut a card for the Earth Golem, probably Sprite Elf or Heat Soul. I mean, they're both very, very good extra deck options, but they just don't come up quite as often as other stuff in my admittedly relatively limited experience playing Rescue Ace. But we are definitely rocking the Mud Dragon and the Garura for sure, in order to make sure that we have these super poly targets. Actually, speaking too of the Mud Dragon, another card that you could potentially use with this, not even super poly, is Proxy F Magician. So, Proxy F Magician is a Link 2 monster that lets you just fuse during your main phase, right? You do have to control the fusion material monsters, but you can very easily make a Mud Dragon with this plus any other fire monster. Then the Mud Dragon you can switch over to Fire Attribute, which will give your, like, Turbulence, for example, target protection, so that way it can get Valor / Imperm when you go to set 4 with it. So, that is another possible extra deck engine you could look into if you have some room in your extra deck and you're wondering, you know, what to put in, right? But yeah, like I said, the build here is just pretty standard. Even our ratios, I think. The Impulse, you could play at 1. Like I said, the build from Mobile EX that won the DK Meta Weekly was only on 1 Impulse. And played the 3rd Super Poly instead. But I think Impulse during the opponent's turn is still pretty good. And if you open, like, particularly Impulse plus Airlifter plus Preventer, that will allow you to potentially start using Preventer as Disruption during your opponent's turn. But in general, just cheating a Turbulence onto the field is always going to be pretty good. Because really the end goal of Rescue Ace as a deck is to just summon this card at some point, set 4, and then reap the rewards of the massive advantage you gain off of that. I do think this deck does have a pretty big weakness, and that's just generally going second. It doesn't play as well going second as a lot of other decks in this meta right now. That said, the deck is so consistent and has so much power when it does set up. I think it remains a tier 1 deck in Master Duel, despite, you know, again, not having a good going second line, or not necessarily not having a good going second line, but having a harder time going second in a best of 1 format can often be a true detriment. But again, this deck is just so good at what it does when it does it, that I think its power level makes up for that, you know, that difference there. So, and again, that's also why we have stuff like Subversion and the Super Polys to help us go second a little bit more easy, and, you know, again, just breaking boards, and making sure that we're able to make our plays. But I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about the build. The games that you're about to see were played on stream. We've been doing that a fair bit lately. Of course, I'm getting back in the swing of things with regular streams. So if you're interested in watching these or other games that eventually go on the channel live, then you can go ahead and check out the description below. You're going to find a link to my Twitch. You can follow and or sub over there. I also have the VODs of the most recent streams posted there. Also in the description, you're going to find a link to my second YouTube channel, Hackselects Plays, where I post all of my VODs for more long-term, you know, viewing / storage or whatever. So feel free to check out those links if you want to see some of these games played live. But we're going to go ahead and break down the list here, card by card, and then we'll watch the replays of some of those live duels. So we are on 2 Rescue Ace Hydrant, 1 Snake Eyes Poplar, 3 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom, and a Joyous Spring. We got 2 Rescue Ace Impulse, 3 Rescue Ace Airlifter, 1 Diabell Star the Black Witch, 2 Rescue Ace Preventer, 2 Rescue Ace Turbulence, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Sinful Spoils of Subversion Snake Eye, 3 Bonfire, 1 Original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye, 1 Rescue Ace HQ, 2 Super Polymerization, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Rescue, 1 Alert, 3 Emergency, 2 Wanted, Seeker of Sinful Spoils, 3 Infinite Permanence, 1 Contain, and then finally 1 Extinguish. And that'll be the end of our 42 card main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp, 1 Garura Wings of Resonant Life. I've always said Restorant, and I actually recently saw a YouTube comment that said, no, it's Resonant, so thank you for pointing that out. We got 1 Likribo, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf, 1 Hita, the Fire Charmer Ablaze, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 Sprite Elf, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Decode Talker Heat Soul, 1 Promethean Princess Bestower of Flames, 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, 1 Access Code Talker, and then 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. That'll do it for our list. Let's see some games now. Okay, so our first opponent is going to be on MathMech, which is kind of funny because I was just saying in the tier list video that I don't even see people playing MathMech anymore. Well, the next deck profile is actually going to be MathMech. That'll actually be a really fun one for various reasons. It was a fun stream. Again, if you want to check it out, go ahead and take a peek at those VODs, either on Twitch or in the other YouTube channel there. So we're going to lead with a Bonfire. Opponent's going to chain Maxi, which I don't think at all was correct. Granted, it is going to be pretty good here. I'm going to add Poplar and then not special summon it before sending a card in passing. But here's the thing, right? And this is something that I've talked about before. If you're going to Maxi and you're going to shotgun it, toggle on and do it during the draw phase, right? Because when you chain Maxi to a non-special summon effect, you not only don't get the draw because your opponent didn't summon, but now you've opened yourself up to getting hit with triple tactics talent. You've opened the possibility up of just having your opponent have the knowledge that you have a Maxi live without actually gaining any benefit from it. Granted, there is, of course, the benefit of just ending my turn, and that did happen here, but that could have also happened in addition to getting a draw or, again, not making triple tactics talent live. There are much better ways to play Maxi. So I'm going to set the Super Poly, nothing else, and then pass. Opponent's going to go for Signet Mining and Pitching. Was that a Veiler, I think? It was a Veiler for the Circular. Going to, of course, Maxi here. And I think they have an Ash Blossom. They do have an Ash Blossom. So no Maxiing them back, unfortunately, in this situation. It was also unfortunate that we opened a hand where, because Rescuers can honestly play through Maxi a lot of the time pretty well, but opening Bonfire and nothing else, you know, we would have had to have specialed the Poplar, specialed the Hydra, and then specialed the Turbulence, given them 3 draws, set up 4 cards. I don't think that's worth it. So when Cirque and Sigma hit the board, I'm definitely going to Super Poly here. I want to do it sooner rather than later, even if they do end up having more extension, which it looks like they do here. Because if I didn't Super Poly right then Alan Bershin will get summoned. Alan Bershin is an Earth attribute monster, so remember that for Super Poly targets Mud Dragon and Garura, attribute matters more than anything else. And I know a lot of the Cyberse Extract monsters have a bunch of different attributes, so I wanted to cut off the Alan Bershin search for another extender. And also I wanted to make sure I was Super Polying when I could. Now, as you can see here, our opponent is going to have plays, despite the fact that we disrupted them. However, I recognize this line, and I know they're going for a Terahertz, and I also know that Terahertz cannot OTK through literally any defense mode monster. So we got our Garura chilling in defense mode. We are all good to live through the opponent's turn. Oh, right. That's right. I thought they were going to make a Terahertz, but they actually heat sold for the draw and then made an access code. Which, to be fair, this line gets a draw and does damage, which the Terahertz line does not. But what it doesn't do, that the Terahertz line does, is set up multiple forms of disruption in the form of D-Save Worm on their turn, and then Mirror Logic Aggregator during my turn. So, and I think those could have very easily potentially mattered here. We did top deck a Rhoda, so I'm going to grab... Oh, I was going to grab an Airlifter, but I decided to grab Impulse instead. That said, if I grabbed the Airlifter, I could have summoned it and then used Emergency to dodge the Imperm. But also, I can just Emergency away the Impulse and then summon, you know, stuff anyway. So, I kind of don't think it really ended up mattering here, what I grabbed. But I could see a world where holding onto Poplar and then Airlifter into Emergency was actually the correct play. Alright, so we're going to get Emergency for the Turbulence, of course, set 4. Make sure that's online. Now I can link off the Poplar and the Turbulence into Hita. I'm actually not going to use Poplar's effect here. And honestly, unless I plan on activating Original Sin that same turn, I really generally just never use the, what's it called? The Poplar effect to put itself in the Spell Trap Zone. Because so often your Spell Trap Zone is going to be filled by the stuff that Turbulence sets. That you definitely don't want it getting in the way, right? So I'm going to make my own access code here. I actually don't have the ability to OTK either in this situation, and it might look like my 4 back rows are now not live, but what I can do is I can just alert to add back the Impulse, and then as soon as my opponent activates a monster effect like this Diameter, now I can just fire off the Impulse, and from there we can summon out the Hydrant, and that'll not only make our Rescue Ace cards live, but also turn on all of their second effects. So Here, I let the Allen Burst get summoned. It will have the Diameter Omni Negate, which is annoying. I'm going to Ash Blossom it. My plan was to then flip Contain, but my opponent's last card actually ends up being the Cross-Eye Designator. I'm going to flip Contain anyway, just to eat the Diameter Negate. And then we'll still be good here, because we still have the Extinguish face down. But I don't want to use the Extinguish right this second, because I know my opponent has a Search here. And I'm waiting for the G-Golem here. Basically, if I can get them to waste that, then on the off chance, for whatever reason, I don't end the duel on my next turn, they will have absolutely nothing left for follow-up plays. Alright, so here is the G-Golem Crystal Heart. And then, like I said, as soon as that's summoned, I'm just going to flip up Extinguish. So that destroys the Crystal Heart, and then now they can't even activate it, even if they did have a way to bring it back. And like I said, even supposing a bizarre world where my opponent ends up with another turn, now they don't have Splash Mage, they don't have G-Golem, they don't have Transcode. It's really not going to be very possible at all for them to be able to come back unless they happen to be on a second Splash Mage, which occasionally they are. But in any case, that's going to do it for the first duel. Let's go and take a look at the next one. Okay, so our next opponent is going to be on Stun. Good old-fashioned Stun. Yeah, I don't know. I think Stun is, like, kind of annoying, but, like, with all the hits it's taken, I feel like it's definitely much more feasible of a deck to deal with nowadays. So, we do get the first turn here. Once again, we're going to be leading with the Bonfire for the Poplar. So this would have been another hand where the Maxi would have been pretty devastating, but thankfully, in this situation, they don't end up having it. Gonna grab the Subversion because we already have the original Sin. Now here, I'm going to link Karibo, and then I will use Poplar's effect to put it in the Spell Trap. Again, I know I said during that last game you often don't want to do this, but if you know you're going to send it away with Original Sin on the same turn, then yeah, then it's fine to do it. So now we get to Hydrant for the Airlifter, normally Airlifter because we haven't normal summoned yet. Emergency for the Turbulence, and here I'm just going to end up giving up the Airlifter. Now I can Turbulence to set a bunch here. I think I make a slight misplay here, where, yeah, I only set 2, and I really could have set 3, because I'm going to use the Alert anyway, so I could have set the Emergency as well, then flipped Alert, and then set my other 3 cards. So I do miss out on an Emergency here, but otherwise, I think it's a fairly standard turn 1 setup for Rescue Ace, right? We have the Hydrant with all of our back rows online for the bonus effects. We have Preventer to make sure that we're flipping stuff face down if we need to. However, against Stun, we probably don't end up needing to be doing that too much here. They are going to grab Super Poly. All of our stuff is Fire Machines, so they're going to go for a Garura here. Definitely want to chain the Rescue to the Necro Valley, because Necro Valley is going to prevent anything from moving out of our graveyard while it's on the field, so we'll definitely do that now, and then we can Airlifter for Emergency for potential follow-up. D-Shifter is fine, doesn't really matter to me anymore at this point. They end up fusing the Airlifter and the Turbulence for the Mud Dragon here, because remember, Airlifter is a warrior, not a machine, so yeah, leaving me with Hydrant and Preventer, I think that was kind of a misplay, honestly. I think they should have fused Hydrant and Preventer for Garura. Because Preventer gives me more options for booking stuff if I need to, and then Hydrant, of course, will, as I mentioned before, make the bonus effects of my Spell and Trap cards alive, so. As well as also letting me activate them the same turn they're set, which could definitely pretty easily come up now that I have the Rescue Ace HQ online. So, Emergency, I'll sack Airlifter for another Turbulence. I'm going to Rescue Ace HQ. However, because I made the mistake of targeting cards that were in the graveyard, Necro Valley will end up negating it. However, if I had used Rescue Ace HQ to put back my 4 banished cards, or my 4 banished Rescue Ace cards, then I would have been able to get the draw. But I mostly wanted to see if it would let me put back just the banished ones, but no, it makes sense because I targeted stuff in my graveyard. It just negates the whole effect altogether. Pot of Drought against Clockwork Knight here. I mean, my stuff is already machines. So, that literally does not affect me at all as far as like what I'm able to summon. But it does, of course, knock down the attack points of the monsters on my field. So, oh, one thing I also want to point out to you is that I knew pretty much during the entirety of this game that my opponent had a Solemn, either Judgment or Strike face down. One of the Solemn cards that negates a summon. Well, I guess Warning negates a summon too, right? Okay, here they're going to try to crack down and steal my Turbulence. I'm just going to make the Garura. Oh, yeah, the Garura. And then, this is actually really funny. So, we fuse that. I make Garura. I'm like, this deals double damage. Surely I have lethal on board, right? I'm just going to swing in with everything. Well, it turns out I didn't have lethal on board. I was actually 100 points short. And then my opponent conceded anyway. It went by kind of quickly there, but you might have noticed when Impulse dealt the last 1,000, my opponent was still at 1,100. Oh, but I was going to say earlier, too, regarding the... what was that? I was in the middle of talking about... Oh, the HQ effect, right? No, we already discussed the HQ effect. Oh, no, I'm forgetting what I was going to talk about now. It was that crackdown that got activated and that interrupted me. Shoot. Of course, I'm going to go back in editing and remember what it was, but, oh well. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, with the... Maybe it was just the HQ, and I was getting mixed up about that, but... Rescue Ace HQ can put back banished or cards in the graveyard. With Necro Valley in play, it negates any effect that moves stuff out of the graveyard, but if we only move stuff from the banish, then we're all set, so... that ends up being pretty easy there. Let's take a look at some of our other games for this video, though. Alright, this duel is going to be against Tearlament. They are playing... It's interesting because it's Tearlament, but they're playing like a Cartesia. They're also playing... I think this is the build that's on Fusion deployments, which you most often see Fusion deployment in Branded, but you can also use it in Tearlament. It's a special Rhinoheart as well. Now, this time we are going second. As they lead you with Shiren, I'm going to chain the Ash Blossom on it. Ash Blossom is really weird to use against Tearlament a lot of the time. Yeah, you can Ash Rhinoheart, but they probably have follow-up. You can Ash the Kikolos effect, but it can still do the second one. So, here I opted to Ash the Shiren. I generally think that Shiren tends to be the best Ash Blossom target against Tearlament. The one Ash Blossom stops three things. It stops the Shiren body from hitting the board. It stops them from sending a card in their hand to the graveyard, which they do often want to do. It'll also stop the Mill 3, of course. So, okay, here we're going to use Impulse in response to the Kiklos. They do end up having a Maxi, so they'll get to cycle it for one draw, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Of course, they're going to mill the Tier Cache here. They end up milling Rhinoheart, but no Tier cards in hand, so they don't get to summon it. Going to mill another 8 off of both Kiklos and Tier Cache here, and this is where things start to definitely go downhill for me. They milled the Rhinoheart as well as Crime. They also milled Scream, as well as the... Oh, no, that's it. Okay. Okay, Fusion deployment for the Rhinoheart. Rhinoheart F will activate to mill the Shiren. Shiren F is going to activate fusing with the Kiklos... Or no, sorry, the King of the Swamp in the yard. To set up the Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World. Setting a single card before passing. I actually mixed this up with a different Tearlament game that I think was from the more recent stream. Anyway, going over the Poplar here, they're going to Solic and negate it. That's completely fine with me, because I do have the Diabell in hand already. So, giving up the Tier Cache, you get to mill a couple of cards with that. Now they end up milling the Havness, which is very unlucky for me. You know, when it was like, oh, I just have to play through the Grapha, and the Solic, it was, a lot more feasible, but now things are looking a little bit more dicey. They get to Kaleidoheart, put back my Turbulence. It's going to leave me with fairly limited options, especially as the Grapha is still online here. Okay, Poplar going to Spell Trap, going to sack it off for the Diabell. Attempt to use my Diabell effect here to set the Original Sin, which does end up going off. Original Sin F, I'll sack off the Link Rebo. And now here the Grapha is going to end up changing the effects to... Your opponent discards one card. So, obviously, not what I want to happen, and Keldo, not what I wanted to see in the yard. I am going to summon the Preventer here, but Maxi is their last card! Of course it is, of course it is. Alright, Preventer coming down. I do have the potential to make plays here, but honestly, with the Keldo up, it's like, even if I go to make either Dark or Hita to attempt a Link Climb, which is about the last thing I think I can feasibly expect to be able to do, then I just use the Keldo F, shuffle back whatever I target, and then I'm pretty much SOL. So that'll be a surrender, but that was a very, very close duel. Like, now that I'm looking back at it I really think it came down to them discarding Keldo off of Grapha from negating my Original Sin. Because if the Keldo wasn't in the yard, again, I could have made either Dark or Hita. Like, for example... Oh, but I don't play Celine. That's the thing. That's right. That's the, because like I was like, oh, I could have access code climbed, but I would have needed Celine to do that. I have actually considered Celine the extra deck for this reason. If I was gonna play Celine, I think I would definitely swap some amount of, if not all of my imperms for effect veilers, just to have like more spellcasters to be able to actually summon off of the Celine effect. But yeah, no, that was a very, very close game. It's closer than it looked. It looked very one-sided, but I do think I was about like maybe one card, and also having Celine in my extra deck away from being able to play through this and win. But we do have one more duel to watch, so let's see that. And our final game for this video, we're going to be up against good old Snake Eye. A tired and true classic. I mean, it isn't really that tired. It's still very new to the game. Anyway, we're going to be going second here. And we did not open any disruption, or we didn't open any hand traps. We did open disruption in the form of the super polymerization. Now, this is definitely going to be the kind of game where I do kind of wish I had the Earth Golem in my graveyard, right? Because, again, you can fuse the Ambler plus IP and summon that, and then that'll take away a lot of your opponent's ability to play through your stuff here. So, looks like they're going through a pretty typical turn 1 line for Snake Eye. Placing the Oak in the spell trap with the Divine Temple. That way they can summon out the... they can chain block, rather, the summons with the Flambridge with the Poplar F. So if I was, hypothetically, say, on Ghost Spell and had that in hand, I would not be able to use that against Flambridge right now. You also set the Flambridge up in the spell trap zone before you get to 5 summons, or right as you get to 5 summons, rather. So, still plays around Nibiru very well, too. Alright, IP and Poplar are going to make the Promethean Princess here, yep. Alright, Princess F, bring back that Ash. Princess and Ash going off for the... Oh, that's right, they're making Pit Knight early here, rather than the Ambler. That's right, they're doing the Heat Soul setup. Okay, so they get to draw a card here, sack off the Flambridge in the spell trap for the Flambridge from the deck. I don't know, like, again, the all-link builds, I'm so torn. Maybe I've seen a test with them. I just don't see a world where Heat Soul is, like, good enough, honestly. I really just have a hard time seeing that world. I don't know, because the line... To be fair, the line my opponent did here is not, like, too terribly different from what you would do if you were not on Heat Soul anyway. And you could argue that the draws off of Heat Soul are better than having just an Ambler on the field. But you do also keep the Flambridge in the spell trap if you don't go into the Heat Soul. Which, I think the Heat Soul line just opens you up to Nib. Like, if I had a Nib, I could have super punished my opponent there. Also, I want to say, the Nightmare Unicorn for my opponent here came down very early. I think they definitely should have held it and gone for an Underworld Goddess instead. We checked their extra deck after the game. They are actually on Underworld Goddess, so... Yeah, this is a lot of the reason why I'm just not a fan of the all-link build, I gotta say. Oh, here, this is another situation where, like, you know, I could Earth Golem plus, or Earth Golem with the Super Poly, but here, I get to make Garura anyway, because Pit Knight Airly is, in fact, a Cyberse monster, so... Boom, there's that. We're gonna Subversion now to send away the Hydrant for another Hydrant. That way I have the number of cards they need in the graveyard to summon out my Turbulence. Turbulence F, of course, we're going to go ahead and set for. And from here, again, if I had Celine, although I don't have Diabell in the yard, so maybe not. I was going to say, if I had Celine, I could go for an... Oh, no! That's right, because I can bring back their Heat Soul, I can still go for an access code here. Yeah, we'll definitely Heat Soul to draw a card. I'll link it off with the Garura. Keeping the Hydrant on the field just in case I need to turn on my bonus effects for my back row cards. And then, yeah, they're just going to concede as soon as I represent lethal with access code plus Turbulence. Again, didn't even need the Subversion or the back rows I sent with Turbulence, but also better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. So that'll end up doing it for our games. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. Again, I do actually plan on covering the combined Rescue Ace and Snake Eye build as well this season. So if you want to see more Rescue Ace, there will definitely be more to come later. But for the time being, let's just move to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for supporting there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.